Baruch Hashem, I'm very happy to be here. I'm speaking to you from the old city of Yerushalayim. Our subject for this Yom Iyun is V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, to love your neighbor as yourself. And the Sefer, Mitzvot HaLevavos, says that this is really the basis of all the interpersonal mitzvahs, the basis of loving your neighbor and not carrying a grudge and not speaking lashon hara, and all of those mitzvot is to judge favorably. Because if you judge your neighbor favorably, you won't have any reason to speak negatively about your neighbor. You won't have any reason to carry a grudge. You won't have any reason to try to hurt them with words or take revenge or any of those things. So what we're going to speak about today in this hour is about this idea of judging your neighbor favorably. So there are two reasons I'd like to advance for why you should judge your neighbor favorably. One is that we are a week before Rosh Hashanah, the Yom Hadin, the day of judgment, when Hashem judges us. And there's a principle in Judaism called Midah Keneged Midah, where whatever we do is the way we deal with people, that's the way God deals with us. So if there were no other reason to judge people favorably, and there are, and I'm going to talk about those other reasons, but if there were no other reason, just in a practical sense, just for your own good, when you stand before God next week, next Monday, when the shofar blows and you're being judged for what kind of year you're going to have this coming year. And the idea is Hashem loves us. He loves every one of us. And he gives us as much good as we can handle. This is a principle. You have to know this. Hashem loves you, and he gives you as much good as you can handle. But since the purpose of human life is to grow spiritually and to fix our midos and to do a tikkun, to repair ourselves, whatever facilitates that process best is what is best for us. And as we all unfortunately know, sometimes suffering is what moves us to become our best self. So Hashem looks at us on Rosh Hashanah when the shofar is blown. And he says, oh, based on who this person is at this moment, not what they did during the whole year actually, but who they are at this moment. They need X amount of suffering. The principle that Rav Kellerman talks about, which is so incisive, is that the word for suffering, yisurim, has the same root as the word for musar. Musar is self-improvement, working on oneself. Same root, samech resh. But yisurim has a yud in the front. And a yud, the word samech resh means to turn. So yisurim means he turns you with suffering. But the alternative is musar, which means I turn myself. So the more we turn ourselves, and I hope through this Yom Iyun today, and all the wonderful speakers you're going to be hearing, I hope we're going to learn many practical tools for turning ourselves. So Hashem looks at us and he says, oh, well, she doesn't need, or he doesn't need for me to turn him with yisurim because he's turning himself and working on himself. Which does not mean, by the way, and this is the principle you have to know, doesn't mean you look at another person who's suffering and you say, oh, well, they didn't work on themselves, therefore they're suffering. We never, ever apply the principles that we should be applying to ourselves for our own self-growth to another person when they're suffering. When another person is suffering, the appropriate response is just compassion. But this is a real tip. And if you want to get judged favorably by Hashem on Rosh Hashanah, then what should you do? You should judge other people favorably because Midah Keneged Midah. And we're going to talk about that. So that's one reason to work very hard this week before Rosh Hashanah on judging people favorably, not being harsh in your judgments, not being critical. I don't know about you. I'm a very critical person. And I've had to work very hard on it because it's not good. And I'll explain to you now the second reason for trying not to judge other people severely. Rav Shlomo Wolbe gives the teaching that my whole life, and I had been on the spiritual path for 50 years. I had been on the spiritual path since my first trip to India 50 years ago. And I've heard many, many teachings about how to change ourselves. I've never heard any teaching as powerful as the one I'm about to share with you. Rav Wolbe says, there are two spiritual dimensions, two worlds, he calls them. It's two spiritual dimensions, only two. One is called the Olam HaYedidut. That's the world of connection. And that world is characterized by love and gratitude and happiness and optimism and faith in God and all the goodies. The other world is called the Olam HaZarut, which means the world of estrangement. And that world is characterized by hatred and anger and resentment and criticism and depression and pessimism and worry, all the negatives. And Rav Wolbe teaches that Rav Wolbe, who's the great Musar master of the end of the 20th century, no longer in this world, but his teachings are still with us. He has a book called the Olam HaYedidut. Rav Wolbe teaches you can only be in one world at any given moment of your life. You can't straddle worlds like the circus performer with a foot on each horse. So if you are in the Olam HaZarut, the world of estrangement, because you're critical of someone, even if they totally deserve it, they did something wrong, so you're critical. But as long as you're critical, you're in the Olam HaZarut. And everything that goes along with that world, you're in the world. It's not like criticism is in you. You are in it. It's a whole world. It's a whole spiritual dimension. And along with it goes anger and resentment and negativity of all kinds and depression and sadness. So the world we all want to be in is the Olam HaYedidut, the world of connection, because that's the happy world. That's the light world, the shining world. I knew someone who was always in the Olam HaYedidut. Her name was Rebbetzin Chaya Sara Kramer. She is the person I wrote the book Holy Woman about. I don't know, Jillian, can we, with this format that we're doing today in the Yom Yun, can we ask people to raise their hands? Can we have hand raises?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how many of you have read my book Holy Woman? Please raise your hand. There's a hand icon there on your control panel. You can press it. And Jillian, you'll tell me like about what proportion of, like how many people have read Holy Woman? Or what proportion of our listeners?
Yeah. Or people, if you don't know how to raise your hand, you can just come back to the chat box and write, yes, I did, or I read it.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol nהיה bidbaro.
It looks like so far about 7 people have come back and said yes, and someone said not yet. I'd love to.
So very, very briefly, Rebbetzin Chaya Sara Kramer was a Holocaust survivor who lost her entire family in Auschwitz. And by the time she was 21, when the Russians liberated Auschwitz, she had no living relatives. She herself was experimented on by Dr. Mengele. She came to what was then Palestine in 1946. She married Rav Yaakov Moshe Kramer, who was a Lamed Vav Tzaddik, one of the 36 Tzaddikim whose merit upholds the world. I believe that she was one of the Lamed Vav Tzaddikim too. Other people felt that way also. Anyway, and they never had any children, and she spent the prime of her life taking care of multiply handicapped children in great poverty. They lived in a moshav in the Jezreel Valley in north central Israel. So one day in 1985, when I came to Israel, and I was not yet totally religiously observant, I was like on the path, but I had been told, I was asked to write an article about women tzaddikim, and I was told about Rebbetzin Chaya Sara Kramer, so I went to see her at this ramshackle shack she lived in this moshav. And she was so amazing. She was always smiling, not smiling like this, but smiling like this, like this, like this huge smile. Light radiated from her face. I had to say that it was like there was a 500-watt halogen bulb behind her face. Light radiated from her face. And from the first time she met me, and I said, I was just like, I just arrived in Israel, just very much, I had, not even been practicing observing Shabbat for maybe even a month at that point. From the first time she met me, she always loved me, and she never criticized me. And there was what to criticize. There was what to criticize. I'm being objective, but she never criticized me. And I never heard her criticize other people. And in fact, she used to call me a tzedekis. Tzedekis means or tzadikah, like a female righteous person. And it was like, I know I'm no tzedekis. Are you kidding? But on the other hand, as much as I knew I was no tzedekis, and even I'm not no tzedekis today, and I certainly wasn't one. We're talking 1985, 33 years ago. Even so, there was a voice in me that said, well, she's not a liar. She's not out of touch with reality. If she thinks I'm a tzedekis, there must be something she sees. There must be something inside me that has the potential to become a tzedekis. And I found out after she died at the Shloshim, there were these Russian Bali Tshuva. She told them the same thing. Oh, you're a tzedekis, you're a tzedekis. So what's it all about? Why didn't she promote our spiritual growth by pointing out what was wrong with us and criticizing us and telling us what we should be doing instead of what we were doing? Wasn't her way at all. She just gave us unconditional love all the time. And because she loved me so much, and because she always called me a tzedekis, I wanted to become who she saw in me. Truthfully, I think one of the biggest problems in the world today is that people grow up without anyone who loves them unconditionally. It used to be the Jewish mother loved their child, and she loved her child unconditionally. But today we know there are a lot of demands on the child, a lot of expectations. If the child doesn't meet those expectations, there's a lot of criticism. I believe that every person needs somebody who loves them unconditionally and is not critical of them. And you need to play that role in the life of somebody in your life. If you're married, you need to play that role in terms of your spouse. If you have children, you need to play that role in terms with your children. To stop being critical and judgmental and to just give positive feedback. Because I saw with Reb Simchai Sara Kramer, it worked. It brought out the best in the people who were around her. And I've known two other great, great women, real holy women. One was Henny Machlis, Rebbetzin Henny Machlis, about whom I wrote the book, Emunah with Love and Chicken Soup, that everybody says, who reads it says it's a life changer. And the other was the mother of the Amshinover Rebbe, my Rebbe, who I was very close to, Rebbe Simchai Nechama Milakovsky. And Rebbe Simchai Nechama was the same way. I would go to her with like complaints. Oh, my children, they're teenagers, and and they're not doing this right or not dressing that right, blah blah blah. And Rebbe Simchai Nechama, the Rebbetzin, just never said, "Oh, that's too bad. They really should be." Never one drop of criticism. Her attitude was like, "Oh, it'll be fine. They'll be fine. They're fine, and they will be fine, and they are." So that's living in the Olam HaYedidut, the world of connection. It means sacrificing the tendency to want to be critical and judgmental. There is, of course, a mitzvah of tochacha, which is the mitzvah to rebuke somebody when they're doing something wrong. But it's already been many centuries that the rabbis have said, this mitzvah does not pertain in our generation. They're not talking today, they're talking centuries ago. They already said,
Which one?
forget this mitzvah. Because why? Because people do the mitzvah of tochacha, but people do it wrong. A person is supposed to do rebuke and make the other person feel helped, not hurt. They have to feel like you're lifting them up, not putting them down. And that is so hard to do that the rabbis have said, basically, just forget it. Don't even try, because you're going to do more harm than good. Now, this mitzvah of not being judgmental and critical, of judging favorably, it applies to yourself as well. Most of us are too critical of ourselves, much too critical of ourselves. In the Kesher Wife Club, which I invite anyone who is a married woman who's listening, I invite you to join the Kesher Wife Club. In our club, we have one rule: no guilt. No guilt. This idea of Jewish guilt is terrible. Guilt only drains you of your energy and never helps you. So if you've done something wrong, which is defined by the Torah, if you've done something the Torah defines as wrong, then you have to do tshuva. And we learn the steps of tshuva according to Maimonides, the 5 steps of tshuva, 3 steps or 4 steps if you've hurt another person, 5 steps if there's property involved. And you do tshuva, and then you're free. And especially Yom Kippur is coming up, then you're really clean. I mean, it's amazing. We're now in the period of saying slichas, and we say the 13 attributes of divine mercy. And we say that, you know, Kurahum, Behanun, that God is merciful and compassionate, and he forgives and says this kind of sin and that kind of sin, this other kind of sin. And the last word is v'nakeh. He cleans. He cleans? He really cleans. It's like you have a baby who you're changing a diaper. The baby is so dirty. Hashem does that for us on Yom Kippur. He cleans us, totally cleans us up if we do tshuva. So in terms of yourself, this is also, Elul is the greatest time of year. On the one hand, it's scary because the Yom Hadin, the Day of Judgment, is coming up on Rosh Hashanah in 1 week. And on the other hand, it's exhilarating because we have the wind at our back. There's no time of the year where it is so easy to do tshuva, where it's so easy to change, where we take one step forward and Hashem just pushes us forward. So I hope you'll be able to use the tips I'm going to give you in this hour. So I still have half an hour left. So I hope you'll be able to use the tips I'm going to give you to really change and become a less critical person, and a person who is more in the Olam Yedidut, the world of connection. So how do you stop criticizing another person? Well, of course, you can stop externally by stopping to be critical. Again, in our Kesher Wife Club for married women, we have what we call the 3 sins. We spell sins C-I-N-S because each one of the 3 sins starts with the letter C. And the 3 sins you should never do to your spouse are criticizing, correcting, and controlling. Criticizing, when you did something wrong, we have this illusion. It's really interesting because we're very intelligent people, all of us. So what do they say? Insanity is doing the same thing over again and thinking you'll have a different result. So we criticize our spouses, or our children, or our friends, or our coworkers, or our employees, or whoever it is. We criticize them, and we don't notice that it never helps. It never helps. Nobody ever improved as a person because they were criticized. Now, the short term, it might work, especially with your children, your employees. If you're the authority figure and they don't want to get in trouble, so they'll listen to you. But as soon as your back is turned, they'll do it again. Criticism does not work. But what if we stop criticizing? We don't say the criticism that we're feeling, but we're still feeling it in our hearts. Then what? So that's what we're going to learn today. We're going to learn how to stop the critical, judgmental voice in our hearts so we can live in the Olam HaYedidut, the world of connection. Because remember, as soon as you criticize, you go to the Olam Hazarut, the world of estrangement, which is not a place that you want to live. Nobody wants to live there. It's a yucky world. So the first thing is to acknowledge that we are all self-appointed judges. We are all self-appointed judges. Some people are more critical than others, but to some extent, we are all self-appointed judges. He's wrong. She's wrong. You shouldn't have done that. She shouldn't have done that. For our webinar, for the PowerPoint in our Kesher White webinar, the Jewish Workshop staff member, Batya Perlman, she made me this great picture. I sent her a picture, and she made this great one to illustrate that we are all self-appointed judges. Can you see it? You see that? Does it showing up here, like there? We're all self-appointed. You see the gavel? Where's the gavel? Oh, there's the gavel. There's the gavel. So we have to start out by recognizing and admitting that we're all self-appointed judges. So how do we stop this destructive tendency? So there's a wonderful book called The Other Side of the Story by Rebbetzin Yehudit Samet, The Other Side of the Story, where she goes in detail and she tells lots and lots of stories, true life stories, about how to judge favorably. So one pointer, very important pointer, is admit you don't know the whole story. And since you don't know the whole story, make up a story that puts the other person in a favorable light, right? Like you don't know what's really happening. So make up a story that puts the person in a favorable light. And your fictional story may be just as true as, what's actually happening. So I had this experience years ago with a plumber. We put in a new, like the bathroom cabinets were broken. We put in new cabinets with a sink and new faucet, the whole like a, whatever you call it, like a vanity, but a big one, custom made to fit our bathroom. And the carpenter came, the plumber came, and put in everything. It looked great. And and I was so happy with it. And then the carpenter and the plumber left. And a little while later, I went in to use the bathroom, and I turned on the new faucet, and it had very low water pressure. So I didn't know, okay, what's happening? Okay, but okay. A couple hours later, there's even less water pressure. By the time it was time to brush my teeth at night, there was no water coming out of the new faucet. I had to brush my teeth using the faucet from the bathtub. So, of course, the next morning, first thing I called, I had the cell phone number of the plumber, who I'm going to call Rami. So I called him. I said, the faucet's not working at all. Can you come today? And he said, well, I'm at another job right now. And I said, okay, when can you come when you're finished the other job? And he said, well, I don't know. I'll try. The faucet's not working. We have no water is coming out of the faucet. Yeah, it must be a defective faucet. I'll see if I can come. So hours go by, he didn't come. So I called him again. No, I can't come now. Well, did you finish your other job? Yes, I did. So where are you? Well, I'm at home. Well, why can't you come? Yes, I know that it's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever, but can't you come? We have no water, and this faucet is guaranteed. Well, I'll try to come tomorrow. I'll see. And I called him the next day, and the next day again. I'll see you. I can't. And like 2 days went by. We have no water coming out of the new faucet. And I'm thinking, on the one hand, this is really not responsible. It's terrible. But on the other hand, I was reading the book, The Other Side of the Story at that time. And it occurred to me, this is strange. Even a very bad plumber, if he installs a defective new faucet, will come within 24 hours, 48 hours. Isn't this strange that it's been like 3 days and he hasn't come? So I tried to think of what plausible reason would keep him from coming to fix or replace the faucet. And I decided, maybe he has a sick child. Oh, he could have a very sick child who's in the hospital. And his wife is with the very sick child in the hospital, and they're all very worried, and he's home with the other children. Of course he can't come. It's and they don't even know if this child will survive or not. Oh, what a terrible sorrow this Rami has. I continued to call him, but there was no edge in my voice anymore. Rami, can you come today? Will you be able to come today? Finally, after 5 days, my doorbell rang, and it was Rami. And he came in, and he went back to the bathroom, and he had brought a new faucet to replace the defective one. And I said to him very compassionately, because he had a sick child, I said, is everything okay at home, Rami? And he started to cry. And he told me a story that was much worse in some ways than, that's a way source, but a story that was really bad. His wife had left him. She had run off with another man. And that man had turned out to be violent, and he was hitting her. So of course she wanted to leave him and go back to Rami. But this violent man, told Rami's wife, if you leave me, I'll kill your children. And he was a violent man. Well, eventually she did leave him and ran back home. That's another story, whether taking her back. But she left him. And Rami, while I was fretting about my faucet, Rami was at home protecting the lives of his children. So you never know. You never know what people are going through. On Tisha B'Av, I attended the Chafetz Chaim video, and they gave out this nice magnet. It says, "Be kind. Every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about." Those are the words that are really key here. They're fighting a battle that you know nothing about. So we often tend to think, oh, they're not fighting a battle at all. They're just irresponsible. They're just nasty. They're just bad. You have no idea what battles another person is fighting. You have no idea what's really going on. So another story. When my daughter was going out on shidduchim, at one point she went out with a guy and it dragged on too long. She liked him, he liked her, but he had commitment phobia or something, and it just he wasn't ready to get married, and she broke it off finally because it was just too long. And then some months later, she started going out with a really great guy. And we liked him, she liked him, he liked her. And we thought, this is it, this is great. And it just was moving forward, and moving forward to an engagement. And came Pesach, it was Chol Hamoed Pesach. She asked if they could borrow our car to go somewhere. And we thought, it's time to, it was really time. It's time. He's going to pop the question, going to propose. He wants to go to some, we live in Israel, in Jerusalem, so he wants to go to the Mediterranean, maybe, some, beautiful romantic place. So we lent him our car. And all day long, I was on edge, today he's proposing. And she came home, like in the evening, having been gone all day. And I was sitting on the couch with our little cousins who were visiting. And I said, oh, any news? And she said, no news. I was devastated. Oh no, not another one. Not another commitment phobe. What? What's he waiting for? First, he had been taking a course and he had to finish the testing for the course. This was ended the week before Pesach. Okay, he didn't want to propose, until the course was finished. He didn't want to propose more. But now there was no reason in the world he shouldn't have proposed that day. We were devastated. A week later, he didn't borrow our car. He borrowed a friend's car, took her to the cliffs overlooking Netanya, beautiful romantic place, and he proposed. And how did he propose? In the back seat, he had this big globe, very, very big globe. My daughter is a real globe lover. He told her that when they're married, he's going to fill the house with globes. My daughter loves globes. So there was this big globe, and they parked the car, and they went to this place overlooking the Mediterranean, and this globe opened like this from the top. It was hollow, and it was filled with rose petals. And in the middle of the rose petals was the ring, the diamond ring. And he proposed. So why hadn't he proposed the week before when we were expecting him to? Because he had ordered this special globe, this hollow globe that opens up with a hinge. He had ordered this globe on the internet from someplace in Europe, and it hadn't arrived the previous week. So that's why he didn't propose the previous week. Like, of course, how could we know? How could we know? The truth is, how could we ever know? You know, that is the point about judging favorably. How can we know? We can never know the full story. So one of the Pesukim in Pirkei Avos that is used when talking about judging favorably, the main pasuk in the Mishnah is to dan et kol ha'adam b'kaf zchut. Judge, it's translated as judge every person on the side of merit. But that's not really what the words say. Dan, judge, et kol, all ha'adam. Not kol adam, every person. Judge kol ha'adam, the whole person. The whole person. Judge the whole person beside b'kaf zchut. Meaning, you've got to see the whole person. And the truth is, you can never see the whole person. And Imachlis used to say that every person's life was like a book. With each chapter of their life, each year of their life was a chapter of the book. And when you meet a person, let's say they're 20 years old, and they look like a real loser, you can't judge them because you never read the first 20 chapters of the book. You're only looking at the present book. The present chapter. You don't know the whole person. You can never know the whole person. Even if you're married to someone, even if you're married to someone for many years, you don't know everything that went along in their childhood. You don't know what effect it had on them. I was talking to someone recently. I was talking to a friend who has like an autoimmune disease, and the doctors can't help her. And she's been going to some kind of therapy that involves like psychotherapy, really, like going into her childhood and trying to find out like what are things, like what's really going on in her psyche. So just the other day, this is a person in her 60s. Just the other day, she discovered something that happened there's a method that this therapist uses. A friend discovered something that happened when she was 4 years old. She remembers what happened when she was 4 years old. She remembers the traumatic situation. But what she didn't know all these years is how that traumatic situation that happened when she was 4 years old affected all her decisions from that time in a certain area. All her decisions in that certain area were determined by something that happened when she was 4 years old, and she wasn't even aware of it. So certainly, her husband or children, nobody else was aware of it. There's no way you can know the whole person. The person doesn't even know the whole person. So when we judge another person, we have to say, I don't know, I don't have all the evidence. The other pasuk in Pirkei Avos, having to do with judging, says, don't judge a person until you stand in their place. So we misinterpret this to mean like, oh, of course, what would I do if I were in his or her position? That's not what it means. It means, what would I do if I were him in his position? If I were her in her position? Not if I were there. If I were in her position, but I would handle it very differently. I certainly wouldn't be acting like this. No, that's not what it's saying. If you were that person in that person's position, that person with their background, with their parents, with their teachers, with their life's disappointments, with their life's tragedies, with all the things that have happened before they met you and since they met you that you don't even know about. If you were that person with all of their experiences and background and traumas, how would you react? And the answer, if you're honest, is you'd probably react the way they're reacting. So there are reasons that we don't judge favorably. One very persistent reason is the double standard. The double standard means that when I do something, like I make a mistake or I forget something, well, I have a very good reason. I mean, there's a reason that, oh yeah, that was a mistake. Okay, but I have a reason I made a mistake. When I forget something, oh, senior moment. But when someone else makes a mistake or someone else forgets something important, we don't give them the same excuse. We don't say, oh, well, it's human to err. Like we have this set of excuses by which we excuse ourselves, and we don't apply them to other people. So it's like, well, of course, I'm not a mind reader, but I expect my husband to be a mind reader. Or of course, I can make mistakes, especially when I'm under pressure. When I'm under pressure, I lost it because I was under pressure. So that's the reason and excuse why it's okay, because you can't judge me. I was under terrible pressure. But do we use that same excuse when someone else in the family or someone else in the office loses it? Do we say they were under terrible pressure? That double standard is one of the biggest culprits behind our harsh judgments. For ourselves, we know the reasons, and they are good reasons. They're palpable, good, coherent reasons why we don't always act in the highest way. Well, the other person also has good, coherent reasons why they don't act, cogent reasons why they don't act in the highest way all the time. Rebbetzin Samet in her book says, any defense we use for ourselves, we should also use for the other person. So that's the first thing. I mean, many tips, but we're talking about the obstacles to judging the whole person, or really allowing ourselves to imagine what it would like to be that person in that person's shoes. One of the first problems and obstacles is our double standard. And you have to ask yourself honestly, if I had done something similar, what excuse would I be giving myself? And why can't I give that same excuse to that person? Because you don't really know what's going on, right? They're fighting a battle that you know nothing about. Something that Rebbetzin Samet recommends in her book is when you're about to judge someone harshly for something, ask yourself, was I ever in a similar situation? Did I ever do something like that? It's like you lent something to them and they returned it, broken or stained or something like that. It's terribly irresponsible. Did I ever borrow something and not return it, or return it not in perfect condition? Oh yeah, there was that time. Well, but there were reasons why, I couldn't have it fixed. It was like, they didn't make that thing anymore. I could no way to get it. Like for ourselves, we have reasons. So next time you're judging someone harshly or severely, think about that. Did you ever do something similar? I mean, I don't think, we often hear that if something really upsets us, it's because we have that quality in ourselves. My own personal experience is I don't know if that's always true. But I know that when it comes to judging others severely, if we look hard enough and honestly enough, we can usually find something that we have done that is similar to what that other person has done for which we are judging them so harshly. Another big obstacle to judging favorably is dualism. Dualism is like the most un-Jewish thing in the world. We are monotheists. We believe that there's only one God, which means only one operative force in the universe. And as it says in Prophet Isaiah, and we quote it in the prayers before the Shema, we refer to God as one who, that he creates light and creates darkness, that he creates peace, and actually what it's in the prayers it says, and creates everything. But in the actual quote in Isaiah, it says, creates evil. Good and evil, light and dark, all comes from the same source. We are monotheists. But when it comes to judging, usually we're dualists. Dualist says, there's right and there's wrong. And he's wrong and I'm right. Now, I'm not saying that there's no absolute truth. There is absolute truth in the world. Now, the Torah's truths are absolute truths. But I'm saying when it comes to other people's actions, this dichotomy of right and wrong always bows us up, leads us to this place of dualism, because the Jewish approach, unlike the Greek approach, and we talk a lot about this at Hanukkah time, the Greeks versus the Jews. The Greeks believe in logic. If A is opposite than B, and A is true, then B is not true. But the Jews, we believe in paradox. So A and B can be opposites, and they can both be true. Many of you have heard the story where somebody comes to a rabbi, and the two people are having an argument, and they come to a rabbi. And first, the first person presents his viewpoint, his stand, and the rabbi says, "You're right." Then the second person presents his point of view, his stand, and the rabbi says, "You're right." And his wife, the rabbi's wife, who's listening to this whole thing, says, "They can't both be right." And the rabbi says, "You're right." This is typical Jewish thinking. Yes, they can both be right. Opposite realities can both be true. That's paradox. So it's one very valuable tool that we've been working on in Elul, in the Kesher Wife Inner Circle. We have our Elul Avoda. And we've been working on not being judgmental, especially of our husbands. And so one exercise we have is we say, I might be right, but he's not necessarily wrong. Paradox. Or he might be wrong, and he's really wrong, but I'm not necessarily right. Right? To look at it with a wider viewpoint. We are not dualists. It's not, if I know that he's doing something wrong, and I know that I'm right, then we are like this, and I have to judge him negatively because he's wrong and I'm right. But if we say, I might be right, doesn't mean necessarily that he's wrong. There might be extenuating circumstances. Things are much bigger than what I see. So my friend, who's a teacher here in the Old City, Sara Yoheved Schneider, she has a website called A Still Small Voice. Wonderful teachings. She talks a lot about paradox. So she talks a lot about I centers. I center means that I am a person, and I look out into the world, and I see what I see. So I have my perspective. And that's all I can see, is what I can see. So if I'm looking at another person, I can't see all the way to the right and all the way to the left. I can't see behind them. I can't see above them. I can't see below them. Because I have this particular perspective. I'm not looking like God looks from above where he sees everything. I'm just looking from my limited perspective, my eye center. And once I realize that, then I can judge favorably. Because I say, and this is really crucial, I say, I don't have all the evidence. I see what I see. It looks very wrong. It looks like he or she is doing something very wrong. But there's so much that I can't see, so much beyond my field of vision. And so that's why there's three possibilities when you're in a situation of judging another person. One is to judge them harshly. They're wrong. Gavel down. Wrong. Guilty. Second possibility is to say, there are many extenuating circumstances, and now that I've heard a lot, or just what I trust is true, not guilty. Gavel, bangs. And the third possibility is to say, there's so much evidence that I don't have. Case dismissed for lack of evidence. Case dismissed for lack of evidence, because I don't have all the evidence. And I have found that this is really the best way to get out of the critical, judgmental self. To just say, I'm not even going to try to collect all the evidence. I'm just going to say, case dismissed. I can't judge it because I don't have all the evidence, and I can't have all the evidence. So I'm going to end with one more story, the story that I love. An angry man came to a rabbi, and he said to the rabbi, I'm impossible to live with. My wife says she can't live with me. My children say they can't live with me. My coworkers say they can't live with me. I'm always angry. I always find that, this person's doing something wrong, that person's doing something wrong, and they shouldn't have done that, and they're guilty and they're wrong. And I'm so bitter and angry, and I don't like to live with myself, person in the Olam Hazarut, the world of estrangement. I can't even bear to live with myself. I'm such an angry person. So the rabbi said, well, so you sit in the waiting room, and I'm going to really think about your plight, really think if I can come up with some solutions to help you. So the man went and sat in the waiting room. And the rabbi called his gabbai, his assistant, and he said, I want you to prepare me a cup of tea. Not real hot tea. And go to the other room, go to the kitchen and come in through the other room. And as you come in through the other room, I want you to accidentally stumble, like right where the man is, and spill tea on that man who's waiting in the waiting room. So the gabbai does that. He prepares the tea, not hot, not hot. He's walking into the room, he kind of knocks into something and spills tea on the man waiting. And he says, oh, I'm so sorry, And the man says, no, it's okay. The tea wasn't hot, and nothing happens. It's not bad. The man says, no, really, I spilled tea all over you. It got all over your pants and over your shirt. And the man says, no, don't worry about it. It's okay. It's no big deal. The gabbai comes back to the rabbi, and the rabbi says, okay, now I want you to take a chair from the other room. And as you're bringing the chair across the room, I want you to knock into the man with the chair. So the gabbai goes and does that. He takes the chair and he knocks into the guy who's waiting in the waiting room with the chair. He says, oh, I'm so sorry, I hit you. And the man says, oh no, it's okay. You didn't hurt me. It's nothing, no damage done. It's okay. Don't worry about it. It's okay. So then the rabbi calls the man into his study again, and he says, I don't understand. You say you're such an angry person, but my gabbai spilled tea on you and knocked into you with a chair, and you just took it very calmly and in stride. You don't seem like an angry man at all. And the man said, I heard you giving him the directions. I heard you telling him to drop the tea on me. I heard you telling him to knock into me with the chair. So that's why I didn't get angry. So this is really a profound point. Because if we're real monotheists, and we really realize that Einod Milvado, there is no other operative force in the universe other than Hashem, then we realize that when something happens to us, it's because Hashem directed the gabbai, do this. Hashem said, spill the tea on him. Hashem said, do that thing. Don't come with the faucet for 5 days. Hashem is running the show. It's not that human beings don't have free choice. They do. and human beings are accountable for their actions. But when something happens to you, be a monotheist. Say, somehow, beyond the apparent action, like the rabbis talk about a man hitting a dog with a stick. So the dog, of course, grabs the stick in his mouth. But the stick isn't hitting the dog, it's the man who's wielding the stick. It's Hashem who's doing everything, sometimes directly and sometimes through a human agent. Again, the agent is accountable for his actions. Nobody gets off scot-free. But if you could really see that it all comes from Hashem, you wouldn't get so angry. You wouldn't get so depressed. You wouldn't feel so violated. And you'd be able to judge compassionately and favorably and not negatively. So I bless you all that this Rosh Hashanah, those you love, should be inscribed and sealed for a year of life and good health and inner growth through joy.